Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, agents. I'm Andy Carl, and today's Let's Talk is, as promised, the State of the Game address. And we will be going over some of the comments and stuff that Hamish has said. Now, I have watched the State of the Game a few times, but I think it's important to really get the nuances of what is actually being said. With that, let's go ahead and dive in. Now, Hamish started off by discussing their understanding of the issues in the game and acknowledging them. This is actually a great start, but it begs the question for me. If you acknowledge that shotguns to the face aren't great, but aren't fixing that, what is that you feel is wrong? Because we saw on day 1.0 that shotgunners were OP, and yet nothing has ever been fixed about them. I know there's been attempts at fixes, but nothing's really ever been fixed about them. Now, my goal is to put this in a positive light, which is why I'm not trying to be very argumentative, but it really does beg the question, if you think it's wrong and you don't fix it, do you really think it's wrong? This is like the president saying that taxes are too high, and then doing nothing and watching taxes go up each year without doing anything. So the first thing that Hamish does acknowledge is that there is a problem, and that this is a great start. But it's not new. This isn't new information. We've known that there have been issues for a long time now. This is something that's been around since the beginning, and part of the reason why the game's decline since day one has been so steep. Now, Hamish says something very important, because it's why I think they're just kind of stringing this along. And he says, in regard to the big issues needing big fixes, that we want to have this conversation over a period of time. Now, to me, this means they have either no idea what is wrong, they don't know that they have the bandwidth to fix it, or they don't know what the solution is to the issues. My guess is that there are a few devs working on fixes, and they need help from the 1.4 team working on survival to get these fixes done, but they can't at the moment. So I would suspect we aren't going to see any major changes to the game until 1.4, which is fine. It's fine for me, because it's thankfully is probably going to be a month and a half away, and that's a lot of time to get a lot of fixes in, and I think that they need to focus on the majority of the fixes. Now, Hamish goes on to say that there's something that that I find peculiar, and that is he continues to say that he wants the community's involvement on these, and we, the community, have continued to provide continuous suggestions throughout the time. So I don't know what more he wants from us. I mean, people like myself, Skilla, Breezy Peasy, Eric's, Upper Echelon. I can't. There's a long list of people who at least make YouTube videos that and we know they watch them. And there's a lot of people over on Reddit that have some really great threads that they acknowledge, and we'll cover that tomorrow. But there are a lot of things out there that are being suggested, so I don't know. I mean, unless there's like a meeting group or something like that, we gotta figure out where we need to be able to plug these in. And is that, Hamish posting a Ubisoft forum post where it says, hey, give me your suggestions in this post, and then 100 people post suggestions and stuff like that. And sure, some of them aren't going to be great, some of them are going to be fantastic. There are a lot of fantastic threads over on Reddit for suggestions, and so I mean, there's a lot of people out there giving a lot of great suggestions. I just want to know, where are we vetting these? Where are we going for these? And I know that as a developer you can't actually say that, because there's some inherent rule that you can't actually take ideas from people, because there's a whole like IP, and it's just, there's legalities to it, so they can't actually be like, give us your ideas, and you send them in and they take them. It has to be garnered, and it has to be vetted, and all of this stuff. It's messy, and I can link you an article on the legalities of why companies don't take your game ideas and go with them, and it's really because of the legality, because they don't want somebody coming back after they make the game that you so suggested to them and say, hey, that's a great game, and then you sue them and go, well, I thought of that, so why don't you go ahead and give me money, or I'm going to sue you for it, because that was my idea that you took. That's kind of the situation that we're in here, because if they take one of the ideas and someone goes, that's my idea, and they have proof, then there's an IP issue here. And so that's really the reason why they're not taking your ideas and asking for them outright. Now, I gotta say, when talking, Hamish does have a set of solemnness that he is exuding, and he mentions being on the same page as the community, but I think we are a little bit beyond being on the same page. If we were, Ubisoft would be allocating resources to fix the game in a much faster pace. Now, they would be allocating designers to rebalance the weapons and gear sets and help drive this game back on course. I do not feel Ubisoft is on the same page. And I differentiate Massive and Ubisoft because Ubisoft is the one footing the bill for this. Massive has to pay their employees to go ahead and work on this game. And if Ubisoft isn't putting forth money, then Massive isn't allocating people. It's a whole budget thing. And I feel like they are getting to the same page, and we've had some very nice things come our way from them trying to make up for it, but it's not yet there. But as Hamish says, they want to get to that point. And I honestly believe him, because regardless of whether or not he's paid to talk to us, paid to do his job, Hamish is a pretty sincere guy, and deep down he is a gamer just like you and me. At the end of the day, he plays the same game as we do. He gets frustrated by the same things, and you can see it in this video. In this state of the game, you can see the frustration on his face, and he gets frustrated by those things. So there is a level of PR that is going on for the state of the game, but I believe that a lot of what he is saying, he himself believes that these things should be fixed. So let's go ahead and move the discussion on the meta, because that's where this video is moving. Hamish says that he's collecting a set of sentry gear, which is funny because that's what the meta is, and that's what it's shifting to. But he also knows that it's a pain point. This is a really good point, and they bring it up in a way that I hope a lot of people do understand, because I haven't really complained about the actual meta when it comes down to shotguns. Just being able for someone to mark you in the head without going rogue is my main complaint about this. The shotgun thing, I don't really, I have a ton of toughness, so one shot from a shotgun isn't going to do it. It takes a couple shots. The shotgun sentry will eventually be balanced out. I don't think that it should be nerfed, but I do think the other gear needs to be buffed. In a perfect world, they do need to counterbalance the gear sets. If one set is based on dealing damage like Sentry, they should have a defense set that reduces damage. This would make the meta in the DZ much more stable. So when a meta occurs, such as a Tanktician or the Sentry shotgun, that there's a equal and opposite meta, and right now there's not really that meta in there. And there's abilities and stuff like that that can counteract that, but they're not really working as intended, because you don't have enough to really go through it. If you have a team of 4 people, that's fine. But if you're solo running in the Dark Zone, you're going to have a lot of problems doing that. So gear sets in general, which were talked about in the state of the game, need to be better, and they need to be more equalized so that there's only one tier and everybody wants a gear set that kind of levels them on their playing field and their levels that to their play style. There should be one gear set in the game that is there shouldn't be one gear set in the game that is better than another. They even say that the gear set shouldn't be looked at as a negative when you get them. So all the people that are getting Lone Star, Blind, Firecrest, you should be like, yay, we got it. And I think, especially they missed the boat with Firecrest, because I do think that Firecrest should have been a very equal to Blind, and with 3 pieces you get immunity to fire or something to that effect. That way fire bullets wouldn't work on somebody wearing a Firecrest suit. But there's a whole lot of issues going on with that. I can say it, but there's a lot of stuff that would imbalance this issue. The issue with them is that they bring up over and over again in this video, and they recognize that the game is not fun right now with the meta in the PvP. I'm going to say that the reason it's not fun is because of the rogue system, and I hate to call it PvP because it's not PvP. What's going on in it's a rogue system, and it makes the gear sets imbalanced and much more prevalent, because in the underground with the gear sets, you're in a co-op setting, so you don't care who's wearing what gear. You know that one makes it easier to run through, but that's it. It's because you're getting killed by somebody that it really shines as to, okay, this is the meta and that's the issue. So really what needs to happen is Massive really needs to take these gear sets, have the test team go into the DZ and really test these out and find out different combinations of stuff that really seem to be OP. Now, let's keep going. Hamish talks about Hamish and the original experience. I think he hits it right on the head. The original Division experience, where he's talking about the scaling of the NPCs. The original game, aka Vanilla Division, the Division we went through with our friends and we did the missions, the enemies were perfectly balanced and they scaled, and it felt natural, like a natural progression of getting harder. But as they went to the endgame, they had no real way of leveling up the experience except through gear sets. Many people don't think that there are any tactics in the game, and even I have complained that their way of making the game harder is to just add armor and damage to NPC. This is the only way to look at it, really. And one thing that people don't realize is they gave us the abilities and the gear sets to counter all of this stuff. Like they gave us, pulse and smart cover to really balance the damage or balance the armor and stuff like that. And they have armor destruction and stuff. There's a lot of stuff to counteract, but it only works if you're in a 4-player setting. That's the problem. This is the only, that's the only way that it works, isn't it? 4-player setting where you can have lots of different varied classes. And that's where people are salty. You can't play the game solo if the game requires a team to make it through the endgame content. This is why scaling should have been better thought out at the endgame to provide a way, albeit slower, for users to do these kinds of missions and events slower. So to sum it up, gear obtainment should be fast and quick with 4 players, but not impossible by yourself. Just a little bit slower. Like if you can do it with 4 players, it should take you 4 times that amount to do it as a single player. That's that's a very simple statistic that I can give you for game design. 4 players doing something is going to be 4 times faster than doing it by yourself. And that is really where it's at. And I'm glad they're discussing these issues because I think it is probably, and as one of the biggest critics of the game, the team and all that, I want to support these guys and help them, because the reason I am angry and frustrated is because I feel like they aren't listening to us and they aren't fixing the game, and I can see this. They aren't listening, and they aren't listening to Hamish and Yannick as well. It's hard when you aren't the designer of the game and you can't instantly shoot over a new idea and say implement it. I understand the workings of why this is taking so long from the inside and why this video isn't just absolutely raging about doing this stuff, is because there's an understanding that I have of being inside the game development process, and 90% of people out there who are playing these games don't actually understand what it takes. And I'm going to actually go ahead and split this into 2 parts because I don't want to run over an hour because the state of the game was pretty long, and I'm going to just go ahead and cut it off here and talk about some of this stuff so you guys understand what it actually takes to go through here and why this video is just not a raging pile on top of massive like my last couple of videos were, because I could go that way. I could go that way and absolutely just rail them, but there's also a very simple explanation as to why these things aren't being fixed. It's not because they don't want them fixed. Believe me, they are not listening to Hamish and Yannick as well. They are not the game designers. Maybe not all of them. They're not the game designers, but it takes a lot of stuff. And now I'm going to go ahead and work you through this because I want you to understand from my point of view. Now, the company I work for is pretty small. It's less than 50 people, and we have a product, which is a lot of great features combined together. And I think that my ideas for new features are great. So I have them all the time, and I always suggest them. The problem is not everyone agrees with the features that I think are cool and should go into the game. And even more so, these decisions take money to implement. I know how hard it is to have been about the state of the game, and these things cost money to implement. For me, one suggestion would be one suggestion I have would take a week to implement. It would make a better product, but is it cost effective to the product itself? Another idea that I have been kicking around is being implemented, but it's in the discussion phase. Like I suggested it a couple weeks ago, and the requirement came from listening to our community. And the problem is that we need to get into a room and discuss it. Then we need to sit down with a developer and talk about how it will be implemented. Does it require any additional API work? Does it require any handshaking? Does it require a lot of back-end work? Do we need to attach it to a database? Where are we going to get the APIs for this? Where in the interface is it going to happen? Who needs to design it? Who needs to bring in the art team and go ahead and develop this? And at one point, it will be activated by the player. And there are a ton of questions that need to be answered before a single item can be implemented into the game. Now, bug fixes, those are the same, but different boat. The developers should be fixing them, but if they aren't, any to fix them, if there aren't any developers to fix them, then that's the resource issue, and it needs to be addressed before they can fix or implement something. For those unfamiliar with the bug fixing process from the development standpoint, this is going to be a pretty boring conversation right now, but if you're interested in this, go ahead and keep listening. If you're not, go ahead and drop off and watch the next video. The first step is to find a bug and replicate it. Now this goes to the QA team. When you guys report a bug on the Division, there is something that happens and it goes into the atmosphere, and when you see it saying that we're investigating it, that means it's gone to the QA team, and the QA team is putting it in a test plan, and they're basically trying to decipher your kind of interpretation of how to do the bug in the game. And that is really the first step. And with these games, it's very hard to do because the information they get from the community, it might not always be as clear, and they have no way of asking you to show them how to do it, except for maybe if you do it on like YouTube or something like that. And, because I've been in game testing for a long time, and I have friends in the game testing community, and it's not, it isn't always clear. Once the QA tester finds the bug, and that is they find the bug, they have spent, at least 8 hours just trying to replicate it. If they find it right away, great, that's awesome, because that saves them time. The QA tester then has to write up the bug, and then it's now in the database for the developer to get to with his 300 other bugs. And I kid you not, each developer on this game probably has a backlog of about 200 bugs. And this is me being very sympathetic and empathetic toward the developer, because I do understand what's going on. And really, depending on the priority of that bug, it can either move to the top or it can stay at the bottom. It's really about the severity and how it affects the game. If it's game breaking, which is why you see a lot of these bugs that benefit the user getting fixed so fast, because if it's game breaking, it goes to the top. And these are like your crash bugs, your imbalanced gameplay, stuff like that really imbalances things and really destroys, because they don't want you leaving the game. They want you to continue to play, and that's why they're going to fix these things that really affect the entire community, not just you. And I know that a lot of you are really thinking that they're singling you out when you get a bug, and you're like, oh, this is the greatest thing ever, like I can exploit it and get all my gear and stuff, and then they fix it like within a couple days, and you're like, oh, they did it because I was doing that. But it's not because of you. It's because they don't want people leaving, and they don't want people feeling slighted, because there are people who really, they don't really feel like glitches and exploits are something that they can use. It's a moral line of whether or not you're going to do it in a game. And I don't feel like, for me personally, I don't care. Like, you can do it, I can do it, anybody can do it. It's really up to the person. It's a personal choice. But what we as a community want fixed falls under the debug or suggestion category, which is way at the bottom. And sure, some of the higher priority bugs like we're talking about, like that are game breaking, like crashes and other things, but a lot of the stuff we're talking about are suggestions and suggestions on how to fix the game. And when that happens, those are at the bottom. Like, they need to fix the crashes first before they actually implement a lot of the suggestions. And then the developer needs to find the bug, which in millions of lines of code with a game like this, there are millions upon millions of lines of code. And sure, you might know the area of where it is, but in a game like The Division, it could be anywhere, to be honest. I know this is something new you guys are hearing from me, but after listening to Hamish, I gotta take a step back and not actually rip into them for once. I know some of you are disappointed because you came here waiting for me to just absolutely go off on this, but as I sit there and I watch the state of the game and I listen to some of the standpoints, I can't actually be mad, because he's being very sincere in the video with it. And he, as a gamer, you got to realize these aren't developers. These are people, and they're developers, but they're also gamers. They play their game. So they may not understand, like, they may not see something as wrong as we do, but there are, they still understand. They're still getting shot in the face by the same shotgunner that we are. The difference is they've played the game a lot more than we have. And sure, that, that's probably it. And I know that you're probably disappointed, but the damage that they have done to themselves by not fixing these faster is far greater than anything me yelling into a mic will ever get out of this. And I will have plenty of time to do that in future videos, I promise you. This isn't like me turning over a new leaf. This is me being very empathetic toward Hamish, because he is a good guy, and so is Yannick, and they're not here to just blow smoke up our ass. They're here to actually communicate with us, and at least in this, they are communicating with us. And this one here is more about getting you guys my opinion on the information and perhaps doing a bit of translating what's being said for you and kind of giving you the background as to what's going on. So that is my time, and I'm going to be back tomorrow with part 2 and most likely part 3. I'll just record it all at once and at the same time back to back, and I'm sure you'll probably go ahead and at some point I will bring the pain train, because on a few things that really just tick me off, but this really needs to be a time that we come together as a community to support our community and not separate it into disillusioned and salty players. Yes, that doesn't mean there aren't a lot more challenges ahead that need to be made and fixed in 1.4, and I still think gear sets need to go the way of the dodo, and they need to bring back a lot of the vanilla high-end classes in 1.4. We need to get back to the vanilla part of it before we start building it back up and adding in the mint chip mix-in for gear sets, and this time around it will bring back a chance to rebuild the game and at least rethink how we're addressing these things and make it right. And I know even the high-end stuff, a lot of us were running Reclaimer Savage gloves, or not Reclaimer, Savage and Reckless chest piece and stuff like that, and that was the meta back then in 1.0. So I mean, there are always going to be metas that we use, and there's always going to be people are going to use whatever's powerful. And the problem is that we need somebody to go in and design the balance of the weapons, and so that they're all really, and that's really why I want an equal playing field in the Dark Zone, is because that's really what it is. Like, I don't see too many people using a lot of LMGs. I don't see a lot of people using shotguns in single player, like your co-op play. You're using it in the Dark Zone because there's a different system at work for PvP and for PvE. Now, if you want to make the system the same for both, then that's going to be different. That's a different story, and that's a different communication that we need to have, and a different conversation that we need to have. So thank you so much for joining me for today's State of the Game chat, and I will be back tomorrow for another installment of part 2 and hopefully part 3. I don't want to make you guys wait for those, so I want to get them out as soon as possible. For everyone here at The Division Let's Talk, I am Mounty Carl, and we'll see you in the underground. Agent out.